All right, let's muse about the Hurricanes, and then we'll move on. We have ACC Media Day next week, which is
Media Days.
4 of them. Too many. 4 too many. Well, no, 3 too many. 3 too many.
3 too many.
All right, the Canes, I was talking about this yesterday. It was a report on a Russian website, which we can call that news or not, that says that Kuznetsov is about to terminate his contract with Carolina, go sign a 4-year deal with SKA in the KHL. And my understanding, and through conversations I had last week, was that this was a done deal. It was going to happen. Whether or not the I's are dotted and T's are crossed yet, obviously we don't know, but that it's going to happen. I wish they would have figured out a way to keep him, because I think he is a big moments player, and we saw that in the playoffs, but I'm not sure this team right now can afford big moments guys.
Yeah, I just think it was an interesting attempt, the decision to go after him at the trade deadline. It was a low risk, low cost, high reward. I just, the memorable moments in the playoffs, and there were a couple of them, I don't know that he ever fit what the way the Hurricanes try to play. Mm-hmm. And then the question becomes, are the Hurricanes going to adapt? They're going to have 3 lines play one way, and whatever line he's on play the other way. Or is he going to adapt? And there never seemed to be any inclination on his part to change the way that he played to match the team he was on. And the Hurricanes style brings them a lot of success. It's their identity. Mm-hmm. It reminds me a little bit, not that this team or these teams had any identity at all. Alexander Semin insisted on playing the way he wanted to play, whether it was to the team's detriment or not. I don't think Kuznetsov is nearly the problem that Semin was. I think he actually fit really well in the room.
Right.
And I think he wanted to win and wanted to do well here. I just don't know that at this point in his career he was ever going to be able to change his style enough to play at really the tempo that the Hurricanes play. When he got the puck, the game slowed down. That was the way it was in Washington. It made him great in Washington. But it's not the way the Hurricanes play. And sometimes I think you just have to acknowledge that this wasn't the best fit for team and player. They gave it a shot. I think it was 100% worth doing. If it had worked out, great. If he'd been able to electrify the power play or score more of the big goals and the big flapping bird celebrations, it would have been great. But I don't know going forward, especially in a team that's retooling a bit, that you really have the luxury of having a guy who's playing his own game. So, look, he found a place to go home. It's a good landing spot. He gets a long-term deal. And, the Hurricanes get a little cap space back.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing is, because it's a retained salary trade, if you do a buyout or put him on waivers for the purpose of unconditional release, does all the cap space wipe out? Do the Capitals still have to carry a cap hit? Do they get a say in this? It's one of those, I don't know if fun's the word, but it becomes one of those salary cap adventures where the lawyers get involved and the union gets involved and the league gets involved. But clearly this is headed the way it's headed.
Yeah.
And, Dos Svidaniya, Evgeny Kuznetsov, it was interesting.
You spoke Russian just there.
It was not dull.
Very nice.
Farewell. It was, as I say, I think it was totally worth doing. It was interesting. It went against type a little bit. It was definitely a bit of a gamble. It didn't work, and now you can get out of it with your hands clean, and that's the important part. They have to buy him out. This works for everybody. So it's an easy exit from something that I don't think worked. I know people wanted it to work.
I did,
and they really wanted to see him, bring what made him great in the playoffs in Washington and made him a great player. I just don't know that he still has a ton of that, or that it ever really meshed here. Certainly playing on the fourth line with guys who weren't going to keep up with him didn't work. And then if you put him higher in the lineup, then now you have more guys changing the way they have to play. It just never really fit.
And if you put him higher in the lineup and he can't handle the pace and 16 minutes a night, then that's a problem in and of itself. And you can always spot Drury or Kokoniemi there for a handful of shifts a period. But ultimately, you want that line to build chemistry, and then you have no flexibility. You can't move players off it because it's too difficult to keep changing your style.
And I think, whatever trust he'd built up with the coaching staff, there was one glaring defensive breakdown in the Garden during that series, and I think that really sort of removed any possibility that they were going to trust him with top 9 minutes at that point. And then now you've got a fourth line guy, and your fourth line, the way the Hurricanes play, and this has always been true of the Hurricanes going back 20 years, their fourth line needs to be an energy line.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't with Kuznetsov on it. It became a sort of hybrid whatever.
Unless he scored, in which case
there was tons of energy. But he was also sort of, right. It was tough to find fits with him on that line because now you've got, Evgeny Kuznetsov.
Now they don't have enough scoring punch in the bottom six anyway.
Evgeny Kuznetsov and Stefan Noesen was never a match made in heaven.
No, but at least Noesen could score.
The theory would be Noesen gets in front and Kuznetsov makes plays and bangs it off of Noesen and goes in and everybody's happy. It just never happened. It just didn't work. So long.
All right, let's. You mentioned the cap space and Luke DeCock is in studio. And by the way, join us on YouTube if you might already be doing that. We're live on YouTube, Luke. Everybody's live on YouTube these days.
It's all ball bearings.
The cap space, the getting almost $4 million back. Right now, if you looked at Carolina's cap number, they've got, assuming they carry at least one extra forward. This is before the Kuznetsov move becomes official. They've got between 13 and 14 million to sign Necas, Drury, and Jarvis, which not going to happen based on what you'd like to pay Seth on a long-term deal and what it would likely cost to pay both Necas and Drury. But now you've got more than enough room to do that and probably have some room left over, and that's even before anything happens with Jesper Fast. Is that headed for long-term injured reserve? Don't know. I don't know if it's a full season. It may be. Could be a Jake Gardner thing, although a player that they want. Right. As opposed to Jake Gardner. So at least it gives them the room. They can do whatever they want contractually with those players.
And don't forget, because Necas went to arbitration, they get another buyout window.
Right.
So if something happens in this interim period now, they still have a get out of jail, not free, but a get out of jail slightly free card. We know they're not going to buy out Jesperi Kotkaniemi, which is what all the fans want them to do, because at his age right now, it just basically ends up being a couple $100,000 spread out over Bobby Bonilla time frame. But they're not going to do that. But it may open up some flexibility to do something somewhere else. And depending on what Necas's arbitration award comes in at, or if there's a sign and trade or whatever, that may be something that they have to look at.
I think they have to keep him. I do. I think they have to keep him, and I think the head coach wants to keep him.
I just don't know. I will say this: 2 years ago, when he came in with something to prove and felt disrespected, he had one of the best seasons of his career. And ironically, I think his last playoff game, what potentially was or could still be his last game in a Hurricanes uniform, was one of his, if not his best postseason game with the Hurricanes. He's won championships at every level of his career except the NHL. The problem is, and will always be here, he wants to be a center.
Right.
The Hurricanes do not see him as a center, and a team with a glaring need for a right shot center has decided that he is not worthy of that opportunity. We have to trust what they see and what they want to do. Certainly, there were, again, defensive breakdowns that you could attribute to Necas in the Rangers series multiple times. But if you trade him, obviously there was a potential deal that could have happened draft weekend that would have gotten the Hurricanes a pick in the top 20 of the first round. I don't know that makes sense. I mean, certainly it does for the long arc of the franchise.
It does if you had signed Jake Gensel.
Yes, very much so. But if you do make a Necas move, you have to get a comparable player of some. You have to get a top six forward back.
I call it, you need a big bat in the middle of the lineup. The Hurricanes have three without Marty. You've got Aho, you've got Svechnikov, who we need to have a bigger bat, and you've got Jarvis.
Yeah.
So they need Necas' scoring, and if it's not Necas, let's just throw out Nick Ehlers from Winnipeg. It would be somebody like that. Yeah. You have to bring somebody back in who can provide anywhere from 60 to 80 points over the course of this season. My feeling is that the head coach believes that he can get that out of Marty. 2 years ago, he was part of the penalty kill. Once Seth became that, Necas lost that time. Well, now Teuvo Teravainen's gone. And Jesper Fast very might possibly also be gone. Well, I know that wasn't good English, very might possibly.
Could possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a need for somebody who can skate, a bigger body, and he was pretty good at killing penalties when he was doing it.
There's never been any question that Marty Necas should be a dominant player in the Hurricane system with the players around him. The issue has never been that he can't do it. but they're obviously reached a breaking point at the end of last season for both player and team where both sides said it may be time for a change of scenery. Or in the case of his dad, it's time for a change of scenery,
right?
As dads are wont to do. Now, the changes to the roster, the lack of interest in Necas at the level the Hurricanes would have needed to pull the trigger on a deal. Sometimes these are the kind of things where it's like going to counseling and you go back to the table and you start over. And maybe that's what happens. 2 years ago, as we said, when he was challenged to be an impact player, he was. And then I don't know how much he regressed last year or just let his foot off the gas or it just didn't work or whatever. But we know it's in there. The issue with Martin Necas has never been that he can't do it. He can. The sky is limitless. It's a conversation that, as you alluded to a second ago, we're going to be having about Andrei Svechnikov this season. We know what he can do. It's time for him to go do it every single night. And especially in the playoffs, the Hurricanes aren't built for him to be a passenger.
Right.
They're not built for Aho to be a passenger, but that's never an issue. They need Necas. They need Svechnikov. They need all those guys to play at the best of their ability because, one, this is going to be a more difficult regular season. There's change. The goalie rotation is going to change. This is going to be Kochekov's team from the get-go. And
do you see Freddie as a backup? I don't see Freddie as a backup. Well, I wish they had moved Freddie on.
Yes, I would. I think Freddie's time here probably should have come to an end.
Yeah.
Nothing against Freddie because of the changing of the guard. And look, the phrase backup in Carolina Hurricanes lexicon is 35 games. That with Freddie's
maybe 38
with Freddie's durability and all that, and the fact that he plays his best when he has a game or two off between games, that may work out. He may have the best season of his career playing 35, 38 games. I'm not as worried about that. I'm more concerned with the way he looked at the end of the playoffs and the fact that
that's why I think they needed to move him on.
The Hurricanes' last best chance with this group, that group now, of going to a Stanley Cup final or a conference final passed by the wayside because they couldn't close it out. Not just offensively, but in that. And
his goaltending was the reason they lost the series.
Yes. So, Freddie should have something to prove, but there's no doubt, as we sit here in July, that it's Kochekov's team to take as far as he can. If he can't handle it, Freddie's still there.
All right, let's start this cover. Well, let me bring up the Open real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the ACC and where Florida State and Clemson sit right now. Akshay Bhatia is teeing off at 10:21 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. That dude has major championship stuff. I don't think he's going to win this one.
Yeah.
But he's got major championship stuff.
We've known that for a long time. And the progression that he's made, winning on tour multiple times now. He struggled a little bit at the U.S. Open. He got himself pretty high up on the leaderboard and then fell back.
And he just blew a tournament a couple of weeks ago.
Just blew a tournament a couple of
weeks. I say that like that's okay.
Yeah, no.
It happens to everybody, Rory McIlroy.
Poor Rory. He's always had the game. He's learning the rhythms of playing on the tour, of competing at that level against this level of talent every week. He showed at Pinehurst that he can put up numbers comparable to the guys who ended up winning the tournament. His time is coming. His time has always been coming. It probably hasn't progressed as fast as he would have liked 4 or 5 years ago, but that's fine. He's still very young. His choice to skip college and turn pro has entirely been validated at this point. There were a lot of questions about that at the time. So, his future remains very bright. I think the next step for him is going to be to truly contend at a major and get that feeling. The one thing we've seen with Akshay over the years, and this goes back to when he was a sponsor's exemption at the Wyndham and things like that, the amateur at Pinehurst, even going back to the amateur four-ball at Pinehurst, where he was, considered one of the young hot shots, and a couple of teenagers did end up winning it. He has sort of shown that he has this enormous amount of talent. He does need a little acclimation at each level. And then once he gets that and the parts of his game that need to be brought up, particularly in his short game, get there, then he takes the jump to the next level. So I think we will see him contend in a major soon before he wins one. But I think once you see him in the top 5, top 10, whether it's the British now or next year at Augusta or whatever, then you can then that's the green light. Then he will be able to take the next step and maybe try to win. I think there's every reason that he can win a major, maybe even multiple majors. He's got the game, he's got the mentality, he's just learning. And the learning curve for him, despite his extraordinary talent, has moved at a pretty consistent pace. And you would expect that to continue. So,
also, with so many of the top name guys playing poorly, I give him an outside shot to be on the President's Cup team, which that'll give him a different feel, and it just changes your rhythm when you play on some of these. And with so many of the top guys, I mean, Jordan Spieth is a mess.
JT,
he was 8 under par, and then he wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, JT barely beat Phil at Pinehurst, and might not even. I can't remember who. Yeah, and the important thing for Akshay in that respect is that's kind of a club. Like, you got to get in that club. The guys who play for the U.S., the Ryder Cup and President's Trophy, President's Cup, whatever we're calling it this year. Those guys all know each other. They hang out together, even if they hate each other. They have history together. And it takes a while to get into that group. Once you're in that group, then all of that becomes easier. Once you learn, again, the rhythms of playing in a match play team event like that, there's reasons why guys like Patrick Reed could succeed there and nowhere else.
Yeah, well, he's not going to play in any more of those teams.
No, but the point is, there was a time where he was accepted in that group.
Yes.
Unwillingly as it may have been.
And then moaned about not playing with Jordan Spieth anymore when Spieth and Thomas had been like undefeated in back-to-back national teams. And like, just you're playing with Tiger, dude.
It would be very smart of the people, of those elite players,
right,
who end up picking the teams because they all know the vice captains and the captains and all that.
They did this past time.
They certainly did. Would be wise to start bringing him along, and even if he only plays 2 days, I think having him there would be very smart.